Dr. Brad Selfox, who is speaking on the mining of Alberta's ecological capital.
Thanks for the introduction, Dave. I'm an adjunct, not a professor, which means I get to periodically hang around universities without the same level of accountability. So I'll be speaking on Alberta's economic prosperity and ecological footprints, the mining of our natural capital. By all measures, Alberta is a young place, where few of European descent can retell stories of their great-great-grandparents homesteading in a fledgling province. Of course, this doesn't apply to First Nations, who have been here much, much longer. For me and my family, it was my grandparents who first arrived in Alberta in the early 1900s. Now, as new generations replace previous ones, so have a suite of land use practices that have created an Alberta that would startle my grandfather if he alive today. Much has happened, a suite of overlapping land use practices that we're witnessing here, all, as they're conducted, require footprints, all create benefits, all create liabilities. The scale and pace and tempo of this transition has been stunning, whether it be forestry, energy, agriculture, transportation, or the way in which we build our residential communities. At the end of the day, as we fly over the landscape, the scale of the industrial footprint, as we'll soon see, is significant. Forward a few hundreds of years to 2005, Alberta celebrates its first centennial birth year. To its mantle of accolades, it now boasts an established position as an economic and political power broker within Canada and an emerging energy giant on a global stage eager to consume our hydrocarbon wealth. To understand how Alberta ascended to this privileged economic status, we must recap the major land use trajectories that characterized its first 100 years. First Nations were the dominant land use, to be replaced by trapping. Forestry comes in, agriculture is the dominant land use, and today the energy sector is what dominates most of our economy. The decades of the 20th century rolled forward. Different natural resource land uses emerged, prospered, in some cases declined, to be replaced by the next entry in the land use queue. In a very general chronological order, major land uses were trapping, agriculture, forestry, mining, and most recently the energy sector. From their modest beginnings, these land uses have grown impressively to current production levels, and these values represent 2005. And you'd be hard-pressed to find any other geography of comparable size to Alberta anywhere in North America that has the same cumulative production of natural resources that we see in this province. So on an annual basis, harvesting 2.5 million head of cattle, 3.1 million head of swine, 114 million kilograms of poultry, 30 million ton of crop, about 24 million cubic meters of timber harvested per year, about 160 billion cubic meters of natural gas, 33 million cubic meters of conventional oil, about 70 million cubic meters of bitumen, 30 million ton of coal, and about 1,400 petajoules of electricity. So by anyone's standards, this province is operating at a fast tempo. Collectively, these levels of natural resource production today are the economic foundation that supports an affluent human population exceeding 3 million people. Having grown at an average annual rate of about 2.1% during the past century, the human population now occupies about 2,250 square kilometers of towns, cities, acreage, and farmyards. The growth and settlement footprint, we're showing the community that you're sitting in right now, Calgary, has occurred at the expense of natural plant communities and surrounding agricultural lands. Although the rate of childbirth in recent decades has declined significantly, our human population growth has not, and has been buoyed up by the fast pace of immigration required to support a superheated economy. The economic inputs and outputs of this impressive growth rate are apparent everywhere you look in Alberta, whether it be the investment capital that has come to the province, our affluent lifestyle, as indicated by recreation, sprawling cities, employment rates that are very low, wage income, or GDP levels. As quickly as risk capital and job seekers arrive in Alberta, this province's economy consumes these inputs and mixes them with production systems that convert natural capital, I'm talking about soil, air, water, hydrocarbons, forests, native grasslands, into products, fuel, petrochemicals, electricity, dimension lumber, paper, crops, and meat. Rapid economic growth has transformed this province at a profound scale, rate, and intensity. Consider the following landscape descriptions that chronicle the consequences of the Alberta Advantage. 11 million hectares of Alberta has been put into cultivation. Most of that was native prairie. 14 million hectares right now is used for livestock grazing. Over 24 million hectares is currently under production for our forest management agreements area. So that means we're harvesting about 65,000 hectares a year. We have about 250,000 hectares currently in residential. These are direct footprint hectares and not indirect. About 518,000 hectares in the energy sector, 620,000 hectares in transportation. We've got a cattle population that currently outnumbers us 2 to 1 and is progressively more intensively managed. We have drained about 70% of our wetlands in Alberta's prairies, and we need about 6 billion cubic meters of water to make the Alberta economy tick for 365 days. The runoff of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment from our lands into waters is about 3 times higher than it would have been in a pre-European time. Of course, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment were running off well before we had Europeans. These are good things, not bad. The issue is that we are 3 times faster than we used to be. That's all changed in 100 years. Distribution of most wildlife species has experienced profound distributions, in many cases reductions in abundances, and populations of several species, examples would be sage grouse, grizzly bear, boreal caribou, leopard frog, are precariously low. Whereas the economic advantages of land use have been widely proclaimed to citizens by both industry and government in Alberta, meaning the average Albertan clearly understands the benefits that land use provide, the economic and ecological liabilities have received scant discussion. Few Albertans appear to understand that all land uses, without exception, create both benefits and liabilities, and as such require a meaningful dialogue that seeks to balance both risk and opportunity. Key to this cost-benefit equation is the recognition that all land uses require inputs of natural capital. This is what Vic was getting at. So the land, the water, the soil, carbon, and energy to build the products that we sell. Livestock, crops, wood, fiber, hydrocarbons, cities, electricity. We build cities, we sell them, the retail portion. So proper stewardship of Alberta requires us to evaluate these trade-offs in an open and accurate fashion. This is to where, to date, I believe we've failed miserably, both ourselves and our descendants. Put bluntly, the average Albertan has received a reasonable education about the benefits of land use, the jobs, the royalties, the rents, the GDP, but remain relatively unaware of the costs incurred to receive these benefits. So it's the unbalanced scale, right? So we all know that, yes, industry's good, jobs, royalties, and rents, but there's something that's been compromised, and that conversation hasn't occurred to the extent it should. If this imbalance is not corrected, Alberta is destined to bequeath future generations with an eroded land base, unable to provide the benefits at the levels it did for their ancestors. Now, key to this discussion is recognition that Alberta is a finite landscape. It's 66 million hectares. That is an equally finite capacity to contribute water, land, carbon, and soil to the production of natural resource products. Whereas Alberta used to be described as a vast landscape, it is becoming increasingly clear that Alberta is relatively small in comparison to the rate at which it's producing the products from natural resources. The trend is exacerbated by the rapid evolution of Alberta into an export economy, whose production of natural resources has little to do with provincial demand and everything to do with global appetite for wood, crops, livestock, and energy. 87% of our cattle are exported, about 80% of our pigs, 63% of conventional oil, 71% of natural gas, and about half are wood fiber. The result has been a declining rate per capita of natural resources. So what used to be an exceptionally large province with relatively few people has very quickly become a small province with lots of people. The question is how many of those places will exist, how much area will we dedicate to those. So maybe in closing I'd say, should my grandchildren hear the term the Alberta Advantage in the decades to come, it is my hope that it is accompanied by a second statement, the Alberta Advantage, where natural resources are managed as if we intended to stay. And I'd like to thank Ernie Waschek and Lauren Fitch and the other organizers for the opportunity to speak at this conference, and thank you very much.